Mm, okay. Is anyone there? Oh, yay. Okay. So can you guys type in the chat? Are you able to talk to me there? Because I have a few questions and I want this to be interactive today. Okay, so I see hands raised. Is anyone else able to type in the chat? And if not, then I don't know how to turn that on. Oh, there's stuff in the Q&A. Chat disabled. Stop. I literally turned it on earlier. I wonder how I can fix that. Okay, wait. Now try. Oh my gosh, that's so exciting. Okay, this is just bringing me so much joy. Jupiter, Florida. You know, I'm from Florida too. Yes, you're my beta testers. I really appreciate you guys. St. Pete. Oh my gosh, so many people from Florida. I've never been to Idaho. Oh, the UK. I am currently in Scotland, so we're on the same time zone here. Finland! Wow. Oh my gosh. Okay, all over the US. That is so cool. Boston, North Carolina. I love North Carolina. I haven't been to Boston actually. Okay. Oh, I'm excited to see you guys. Oh, Janelle, hi. I think I just got a text from you, but I didn't read it yet. Miami. Okay, yeah. I'm from Fort Lauderdale originally. Grew up there for a little bit, and then Melbourne, Florida. Um, okay, I think I'll probably give people just a couple more minutes to get settled, but I'm just wondering here, how much astrology do you guys know? Like, do you do readings for people? Are you totally beginner? How do you perceive your own knowledge? I'm new but learning and researching now. Intermediate. I can understand things piecewise, but synthesis is difficult. Yeah, synthesis is definitely the hardest part. Advanced non-professional. Okay. Patria? Is it Patria or Patricia? I don't know why I want to say Patricia. Close to intermediate. I just researched charts, placements, and houses. A fair bit. I have a basic understanding of my birth chart. As in one of your clients, I have learned something. Of course, I know. I recognize you, Edom. Basics down, but have trouble putting it all together. Jade, I think you're not giving yourself enough credit. It's funny, I know a lot of you guys. I've dabbled and taught myself. I don't know, but solid beginner with some intermediate knowledge. I still can't read a chart though. Intermediate, but not professional. Okay, that's what I noticed. I think most of my followers have already an understanding. Um, Beginner, I know that I can recognize, well, everything my birth chart but can't interpret. Okay, yeah, it's good to have. We are going to kind of move quickly today, so it's good to have some basis. Of course, I am going to be teaching astrology course where we will cover the basics at the beginning, but it's like anything, you can usually grasp a little bit more complexity when you already have some foundation. Okay, amazing. So let's just go ahead and get started. People can join us if they want to. I can follow astrology talk lingo pretty easily. When I started, it was total Greek mumbo jumbo. I do worry that when I talk, people are like, "What the heck is she saying?" Um, okay, so let's see. Hey, Kristen. Yes, Kristen took part in my previous astrology course, which was really not, it wasn't publicly announced or anything. And so we got to know each other quite well. Okay, so I'm going to go ahead and get started. So today we're going to be talking about the psychology of the moon, and at the end we're going to be talking about this new course I'm offering. So just kind of really rough overview. We're going to talk about the basics of the moon, the what the moon is, the sign, the houses, the aspects, what that means. We're also going to cover a little bonus called a dispositor, and then the course at the end. If you guys have questions, um, feel free to put them in the chat or the Q&A, and I will try to answer everything as we go along. So, but if I have my chat up, you guys can't see that chat, right? I just want to make sure. Let me know if it's blocking anything. I don't think it is. I don't think you guys see it, but okay. So basically, I think I got into astrology just like most people do, watching stuff on YouTube. I'm going to be using whole sign, but I use Placidus personally as well. But yeah, so I really got into astrology during a transition period of my life. And I think that, people come to this craft or this divination tool for that very reason, because we get into a place of uncertainty. And so that is what helped me a lot. And I started to realize how much it allowed me to accept my internal contradictions once I really got to see how all these pieces fit together and why I try to define myself as a specific kind of person. And I felt like I wasn't really fitting into a particular box. And it was so complex. Astrology finally helped me understand myself. And then when I started using it on others and helping them feel really seen, it just took on a whole life of its own. And I knew that I had to go into this as a profession, even though that was never my original intention. So if you do decide to really develop the tool of astrology in your life, it will be a lifelong tool of clarity, even if it's just for yourself. But it will allow you to really embrace more self-trust and healing as well, because I think acceptance of yourself and your path is very healing for people. So actually, I'm 32 now. When my dad was 40, he took his own life. He struggled with addiction and whatnot, but he was always very sensitive. And I've looked at his chart and can see some, some reasons for why he suffered. And so one of my main motivations with astrology, and particularly choosing the moon to talk about today, is the fact that I think when we have the tool of astrology to understand ourselves, it can help us process certain things and accept certain things that we might otherwise really struggle with. And I think it allows us to have a more conscious and healthier choice in how we react to things. And I think my dad really struggled with that. The moon is our emotions, and obviously he struggled with that. So it's my goal to help people heal with astrology. So really astrology is like a cake. And, I just went to a conference recently in Seattle, and I noticed, thank you, Layla. And I noticed that a lot of the astrologers there, and no offense to them, because they're great, but a lot of them kind of struggled with understanding that not everything is super significant. Not everything is going to be weighed out the same. So this is my goal. This is something that I think I really excel at with astrology, is understanding, just because I've done hundreds of readings by now and I really got to see astrology play out live, I feel like I have a strong understanding of what is really felt and noticed in people's lives and what is important to look at versus what is more decorative or adds nuance and complexity that you can get to later. So when you're learning astrology, it's really the goal, in my opinion, to kind of start off with the bottom layer of the cake, which is just, first of all, looking at, what does this planet mean in and of itself? And then you can add on the layer of, okay, what sign is that planet in? And what does that mean? And you can already tell people a lot about themselves and their lives just by looking at those simple tools, those first tools. Then you can add on the complexity of a house, an aspect to other planets, angles to other planets, and then dispositor, which we'll talk about at the end. So we're going to kind of cover the signs today. We're going to cover that fully, and I'll probably run through the houses really fast, maybe not talk about all of them, and then we're going to just touch on some aspects because it's too much to talk about in one class today. So let's start off with what is the moon? And again, why did I choose the moon? Obviously, for the reasons I said about my father, I think it's helpful to understand our emotional nature because, again, that's what the moon is. But the moon is so much more than that. And I truly do feel like it's at the center of all of astrology. And I may be biased because my Mercury is in Cancer, which is ruled by the moon. But regardless, the moon is so pivotal. It really is that kind of foundational piece of our psychology that everything else is built up off of for the rest of our lives. So in astrology, the moon not only means our emotions, it talks about our needs, our reactions, our coping styles, like what do we turn to when life is hard. It shows you our habitual nature, what we just kind of do on repeat without thinking. It's more of this kind of the mind before language. So it is really truly the root of who we are. It's our ancestry. It's very much implicated in our DNA, in our relationship with our family, our mother, our parents in general. It also relates to our health. So when you want to look at somebody's quality of health and quality of life, you want to look at a number of factors, but one of the main ones is the moon. And so that's why I think, you can argue that the way that you emotionally are responding to things has a direct impact on your physical health. So it's my theory, that if we're ignoring our emotions, compartmentalizing or turning to unhealthy coping mechanisms, that we can develop ill health over time. And that's something that I really want to explore in my astrology practice. It also relates to our fortune. In traditional astrology, fortune was a complex thing because in ancient times, yes, money was really important, but fortune also represented a more holistic and kind of cohesive idea of what it means to be blessed. So this could look like money, health, happiness, just overall well-being and the sense of prosperity. So the moon is really important in indicating how fortunate will you be in this lifetime. And often famous people, which we will look at a chart of some famous people today, will have a really prominent moon. Like, for example, a moon conjunct the North Node, because the North Node kind of acts as a magnifying glass. So usually fame and publicity and the public in general is represented by the moon. So if you have an ill-favored moon, you might have difficulty in public relationships and being a public figure. Or the opposite could be true if you have a positive moon. The moon also rules over our emotional memory, like the amygdala and the hippocampus. So it has a lot to do with our mental state and the quality of our mind. So we don't just look at Mercury, which is the planet of like thoughts and language. We also look at the moon. Both of those planets together really comprise, I should say, our mental health. So you will see people with, mental disorders, and we will see that today in this session when they have an unfortunate moon. And that's often seen with like moon south node conjunctions. So the opposite of what I just said. Yeah, and it just relates to our overall past, ancestry, and everything like that. So you can see how the moon really plays a vast role in our life. And I think, sun sign astrology is so popular. We focus so much on I'm a Gemini or I'm a Cancer. When in reality, I think the moon is probably even more significant than that. And it plays such a pivotal role in relationships because when you get to know someone, when you live with someone, you see this part of them that no one else gets to see. And that is the moon. The moon literally represents the physical home, but it also represents on your internal world. And the kind of true nature of somebody that you get to know in a long-lasting relationship. So when you're friends with someone for years, that's when you see their moon sign, whereas initially you might kind of see their sun sign first. So I'm going to kind of touch on this briefly in today's session, but this is something that my course is specifically going to deep dive into, and that is kind of these phases of development and psychological development in our life and what planets correlate to them and what these phases are about. Basically, from 0 to 18 months, we are in the oral phase of life where we don't really have, all of our cognitive functions yet. Obviously, we're not speaking, we don't have uh, these capabilities to function on our own. We are truly dependent in this phase of our life. And it's so critical. This is why the moon is so important. It's so critical during this phase because if something doesn't go well, it affects everything else. It's kind of like if you mess up the foundation of a building, everything else that you build on top of it can kind of crumble or be somehow leaning or somehow messed up. So that's why I think the moon is kind of the foundation in many ways of our overall fortune in life and well-being, because it is during this first 18 months of life that we get to know what is our relationship with the world. And primarily, our relationship with the world is kind of centered around our relationship with our family, because that is who we are dependent on to survive. And in particular, we have, emotional regulation through physical co-regulation. So being held, being breastfed or bottle fed, crying and then being picked up, or having our needs met by maybe having our diaper changed or being fed. That is the primary way that we learn what we think about life. In particular, we're developing how much we can trust life to meet our needs, to make us feel safe, or we maybe develop a mistrust of life. So, for example, if you are a baby and you're just crying in your crib, which they've discovered that in some of these orphanages, for example, maybe in Russia, where they have orphanages that are just really populated with a lot of babies and not a lot of caretakers. The babies, they will cry and cry and cry at first, and eventually they will just stop because they recognize that I cry and no one answers, no one's coming. And so they have to learn how to self-soothe or just disown their need for whatever they have. And that's when we start fragmenting mentally because we need something, but our caregivers are not responding, in the like fashion. And we start to kind of disown that need as a result, to kind of cope, to be able to withstand. And so this is something called attunement. And it really is a form of connection where you can read the other person and what they need, and you match what they need. So if I'm clearly sad and someone comes up to me and tries to soothe me, they are tuning to my inner world. They're seeing my inner world, and they are trying to meet the needs that I'm clearly kind of presenting or asking for. So when we're in this oral phase of development in this first year and a half of life, we're kind of establishing the baseline of our emotional nature and what we can expect from the world and from people around us. And if we don't have certain needs met, then we can come up with strange coping strategies or adaptive strategies to kind of make ourselves feel better. So this is where we talk about, being a runner, or an avoidant, or being dissociative or fawning. Those types of strategies are all mechanisms to cope with the discomfort of not having needs met. And so again, this really shows you about your earliest beliefs around life. And the moon, the placement of the moon, the sign that's in the house, the aspects will point to what was going on at those early times in your life. And these kind of pre-language or pre-cognitive, I can't remember the exact word for it, period of time where you've established a almost like a framework or a paradigm for the way in which you're going to view life. Does that make sense? Because I know it's a little complicated. I'm trying to kind of speak about it quickly, but let me know in the chat if you have questions about that or if that made sense to you. Makes sense. Okay. Awesome. I'm so sure it makes complete sense. Okay, great. I'm so glad to hear that. So, really, the moon is this interesting piece where our inner world is finally meeting or interacting with our outer world. And a lot can go wrong in that process. A lot can be misunderstood. And this is why the moon is so pivotal in our relationships. But it is almost like a translation piece that's happening through other planets involved. It's the lens in which we view the world. So if you had your parents neglect you as a child, even if it was small things like um, they are holding you and maybe they're physically there, but maybe they are not present with you. Maybe they're not looking at you, right? Or they're on their phone. That is its own type of neglect in a lighter term. And so that can dictate the lens in which you view the world as you experience all these little unique ways of kind of being, yeah, neglected in certain ways. And the moon is super important in telling us what your needs are and what is super important to you as a soul. And if you can meet your own needs, it will improve your quality of life and improve your relationships. Okay, Iram asks, does this determine our astrology or does our astrology cause this? Not sure if it makes sense. I don't know. I think that's kind of like a chicken or the egg thing. I just had a long talk with Jade the other day about free will and astrology. So I think it kind of goes into that discussion of like how much of this is predetermined. So we can maybe talk about that at a later time. Yeah. So before we get into the section around like what your mood tells you about your needs, I would love for you guys to write in the chat, what are three of your most important needs that you can think of? It doesn't have to be of all time ever, because we don't have time to maybe really ponder all of that, but what are three really prominent needs in your life that you can recognize, you can immediately feel that when I'm not meeting these needs, besides obviously like food, sleep, that type of thing. Okay, so Layla says love, home, friendship. Chandler says security, freedom, needing to have a voice. Okay, I'm curious what your moon sign is in. Okay, Erica Couch just says needs. Okay, but what are the needs, Erica? Connection, freedom, privacy, feeling seen and heard. Courtney, I wonder what your moon sign is too. Financial security, beauty, routine. Yeah. Capricorn moon. Okay. 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 Connection, freedom, love, being seen, having a voice, love. Okay. I love this. Peace, freedom, reciprocity, emotional depth connection, time alone to reflect, time for hobbies. Libra moon, I always need everything in my life to be fair and balanced, looking for justice, law enforcement for a decade. Moon in eighth, Sag with Jupiter in third house, Cancer, unconditional acceptance, financial freedom, stability, peace after, not Capricorn, but close. Feeling heard, being in nature, connection, creative passions. Beautiful. Okay. So it's kind of hard to choose like what are our primary needs because there's so many that they can be. Physical touch, laughter, respect. Beautiful. Yes. So respect is a big one for Capricorns. And Erica, I do believe your moon is in Capricorn. Okay, so we're going to break down what are some kind of cornerstone needs for each of the signs, and I have them all set up by element. So the moon Sag, okay, Sun Capricorn. So okay, so anyway, the fire sign moons, Aries moon, Leo moon, Sag moon. So for Aries, a strong need is survival, freedom, independence, activity, adventure, novelty. So what happens when an Aries doesn't have adventure, when they don't have independence, when they feel maybe stifled in a relationship, or they have been at the same job every day after day, and they have a really strong Aries moon. What's going to happen? Well, they might start to get really anxious. They might start to get irritable. They might get really restless. They might start over exercising to the point of maybe getting an injury. They might start turning to physical needs like lust or sex to kind of stimulate the desire for adventure or activity and movement and again, freedom. So if you have unmet needs, these are the signs that something is going wrong, right? When you turn to these things. So for an Aries moon, some healthy ways that they can start to meet that need would be to try something new, to go on some kind of adventure or take some kind of risk. I believe Janelle is here and she has an Aries moon. Um, and Yeah, and I know that she went and got a motorcycle and started riding. And there's that element of needing to take a risk or have the adrenaline pumping through you. Aries rules over our adrenals. Physical exercise, having goals, having a mission. This is what Aries moon needs. And so those are healthy ways to meet the needs. And if you have unmet needs, then you're gonna notice that those things can tend to happen that I have listed there. When I say someone has a strong moon, I guess there's a little complexity to that, but I guess I just mean their moon is not kind of drowned out by other parts of their chart. So if you have an Aries moon, but you have like most other planets in Earth signs, which are very grounded and kind of security driven, then the Aries moon might not be felt as much. Or if you have Aries moon, but it's kind of conjunct Neptune, that can deflate a lot of the energy. So that's what I mean. It's a little complicated, but yes, all charts are a little complicated, so there's always this nuance. So for a Leo moon, they really need to have their strong sense of presence and identity, often to be witnessed, to be validated, to have, something that can help them build their self-esteem, whether it's, creativity or having something that they're playing around with. And yes, play is a really strong theme for these people. Self-expression, leadership, so I have had a Leo moon friend, and when she was kind of feeling out of it, she would go and completely cut her hair or dye her hair because Leo, rules over the hair. So that is a way to meet the needs. Music, art, play, like going to just play on a playground or playing a sport. Leo tends to do really well with sports. If you have unmet needs as a Leo, you might try to do things in unhealthy ways, like turning to social media for validation or finding validation through sex or through the opposite sex. Maybe there could be insecurity there where you're hiding from the spotlight or you're focusing too much on looks because you're not actually feeling fulfilled and you're looking for something more. So that's Leo. Sagittarius, moon, they need truth, meaning, wisdom. Um, yeah, okay. Natasha said, Leo moon, this is so true. Whenever I'm going through something, I usually change my hair. Yes. Yeah, and it's a healthy way to let that out as an outlet, as long as you like what your hair looks like after. But again, Sagittarius moon, they have a strong need for truth, meaning, wisdom, expansion, hope, justice, growth, adventure. So, Sagittarius is all about progress. And if my Sagittarius moon people don't feel like life is progressing, if they feel really stuck or stagnant or limited in some way, if they're not reaching to some new horizon, then they might start getting a little flighty. They might start, making ungrounded plans and doing this and that and always trying to do more. They might get really over optimistic. Sagittarius is a sign associated with like mania. So you will often see some kind of like manic disorder associated with them, if there's mental health stuff going on. Um, there can be sometimes like a judgmentalness that comes from them. If they're not being satisfied, they could kind of get on their high horse. So if they're doing any of that, it's because something in their life is not being fulfilled. So some common ways for Sagittarius to feel like they are progressing is to maybe travel somewhere or go out and teach or learn something new or go on an adventure, just like Aries. Maybe go horseback riding. Religion is super therapeutic for my Sagittarius moons. Having some type of kind of ritual or some type of practice that is spiritual or even not. But having something like a religion can be very soothing to them. Do we have any Sagittarius moons here as well? Sag moon can have melancholy if I don't feel like things are moving forward. Yes. Yeah, Sag is really, again, it's the archer. So it really is about having your aim, taking aim, and moving towards some kind of direction. The growth piece is super, super important. So earth signs, they have very opposite needs. They tend to be more grounded. So a Taurus moon, they need something consistent. They need something safe. They need something stable, comfortable. They need pleasure. They need to feel like they own something. And when their needs are unmet, they can turn to food, they can turn to shopping, they can turn to sex, things that are kind of indulgences. Layla said that's totally me. Yeah. And routine, exactly. So my mom is a Taurus moon, and anyway, I don't want to give too much of her personal stuff away, but I know she could be more fulfilled in certain things in her life. And I notice that when she's not really getting what she needs, she will, sit in front of the TV with like a big thing of chocolate or snacks or salt. She loves salt. Um, and so when I see her most fulfilled, she's usually doing something like gardening or going out in nature or getting a massage or, just feeling like things are really financially stable or cooking, which is not really for her, but in in general. Virgo moon. So when I was looking through my charts of all my clients, I noticed that like it felt like almost everybody had a Virgo moon, which I don't know why. So if anyone in the chat has Virgo moon, let me know. But a Virgo moon, one of the things that Virgos need most is to feel some type of like usefulness. So being of service is extremely rewarding for a Virgo moon. When you allow them to help you in some way, they want to feel competent. They want to feel like they have yeah, I'm a Virgo rising, so definitely drawing my Virgos in. They want to feel like they're getting shit done. They want to feel efficient, productive. They want to have, strong health or always be working on themselves, bettering themselves, which is also kind of a sad thing. And then also some level of control. I think it's important for Virgos to feel some semblance of control over their environment or the way that something is done. That's why they tend to be a little bit more particular, maybe about things within the home or within their body. And when they don't have their needs met, they will be usually like doing too much. So, this is like somebody who starts stressing out about everything or is complaining or nitpicking things and they won't rest, they won't sit down, they're running here, they're running there. I mean, it's okay to have a little bit of that, but when it goes into the excess, that's when you know that there's some unmet need or some kind of imbalance in life. And so a way to kind of establish that sense of fulfillment again is to kind of go back to the basics. Like I have my routine, I'm clean, my house is organized, I'm exercising, I'm eating healthy, the fundamentals of kind of what it takes to run our lives on a day-to-day basis. Okay, Capricorn moons. Okay, Iram says service is interesting. This is true. I want to be of service, but when I'm feeling unappreciated, that hurts. Yes, that's something I need to work on. That is such a Virgo thing as well. Is it's not just being of service, it's feeling useful. And the way that people feel useful is through some kind of obvious side effect where people, are saying, this is helpful. Thank you. That's how you feel useful, not just by actually being useful. So, Capricorn moons, if you are out there, drop it in the chat if this relates to you. So, Capricorn moons, there is a really strong need for Capricorn to be respected. So, whatever planet you have in Capricorn, it needs to have some type of respect. And usually that's through some type of achievement, through having some type of success, through perfecting something, mastering something difficult, having order in your life, and working on kind of the self-esteem thing. So yeah, so true. Yeah. Unmet needs, they can overwork, they can neglect themselves or others, emotionally or even physically. They can get pessimistic, negative, depressed. And when they are exercising their needs in healthy ways, this is usually, setting goals, especially for long-term difficult things. They're the goat. They need to be able to climb up the mountain, even though they're the sea goat, which is a little more complicated, but they need that difficult ascension to a next plane of existence. They need to be productive. They need to feel like they're leading something or having some semblance of authority over something, and that is going to bring them the most satisfaction, even if it's just a small thing, like I'm taking charge in this school project over somebody else. It doesn't have to be anything huge. I'm a Capricorn moon as well. Okay. Air signs. So we have Gemini moon. I also know quite a bit of Gemini moons, probably because I'm a Gemini sun. And what they primarily need is some level of understanding over things. So, if you're not communicating with a Gemini moon, I think, and you're not expressing something or you're withholding information, that can be painful for them. They need information, they need to understand, they need to learn, they need to look at the data. They also need to explore and to have some level of kind of socialization or connection, even if they are, introverted. They still need that level of connection, and oftentimes, like social media can be a really big thing. Um, Yes, yes. Silence is from people not talking about things is so painful as a Gemini moon. Yeah, exactly. Because the mind needs to grasp something. And if not, if there's an unmet need around that, there can be this restlessness, that all the Mercury ruled signs, Virgo and Gemini, tend to be very restless. They can overstimulate themselves by doing too much, learning too much, being too distracted, thinking too much. So when they are kind of channeling that into a healthy place, then it will help them. So things like learning, traveling, watching comedy, or writing, again, seeing new places or trying new hobbies, trying new things, connecting people, that's when they're going to be their healthiest. Libra moon individuals. So these people need relatedness, they need a sense of harmony, justice, balance, partnership, intimacy, marriage. I think it's kind of painful for a Libra moon people to not be in a relationship. Not that they need a million relationships, but that will kind of depend on the rest of their chart. But they usually need to feel like, yeah, I have a romantic partner, or I have a best friend, or I have someone to rely on. And Jade, yeah, Jade totally gets this. When they are not meeting those needs, they can be a little bit codependent, or they might distract themselves in other people's stuff or in with relationships in general. They could turn to indulgence or to vanity. It could be healthy though if it's done in the right way. So, a beauty regimen can be very healthy for my Libra moons. That's something that they should invest in. But if they're really investing in it like too much, focused on vanity too much, then you know that something is not being met, some need. Art, design, love, those are all really important ways that they can meet their needs. So Dacia says Libra moon relationship friendship thing is a sore spot. Absolutely, yeah. And usually where we have planets, like the sign that we have a planet in, um, is where we have more energy generating. So it either is a really prominent area of our life or it's a sensitive area of our life or both. Okay, Aquarius moons, they need awakening, they need perspective, they need revelation, liberation, change, progress, freedom. These are kind of the outliers of society. So they are usually needing to be involved in uncommon hobbies, uncommon interests. I know my Aquarius moons, they need a lot of alone time and something that isn't necessarily typical for astrology, but that I have seen in my practice is that a lot of Aquarius moons benefit from time alone in nature or time with animals. I think it's because they kind of get burnt out with people. So it's almost like animals are like a healthy alternative, because they care about humanity, but then they can also get frustrated by humanity. So when the Aquarius moon is having unmet needs, They can tend to dissociate. They can really isolate excessively. They can deny the reality of something. Pisces can also do that. And so that's a possibility. Does anyone here have an Aquarius moon? Aquarius moon, fifth house, definitely need a lot of alone time and love spending time with my dog. Absolutely. Yeah. Aquarius moon, time alone nature is always my go-to. I'm definitely in a season of isolation right now. Yeah, and isolation, can that can also be astrologically related, but I think it's important to know if there's something emotionally going on there too. Like, um do I have an unmet need or some kind of difficulty processing something that could have me reverting to isolation out of like an emotional reaction, which is very common within Aquarius moon. Uncommon hobbies, which is hard to relate to others. Exactly. That's why the internet is Aquarius or Aquarian in nature, because you got to connect with those people somehow from really diverse backgrounds. And astrology is like that too. So, okay, finally, we have the water signs. So we have Cancer moon. Cancer moons, they need nurturing, they need belonging, they need family, tenderness, caring, protection, closeness with others. And healthy ways to meet this is by being a parent or having some type of like thing that you take care of, even if it's a plant. Taking baths, anything with water for all of the water signs, especially Cancer and Pisces. Self-care activities, cooking, relaxing, doing things to kind of nest or improve your home is very, very healing for Cancer. When their needs are not met, they might be moody, they might be overly dependent on others. There can also be some restriction around food. Usually, like eating disorders are linked to Cancer, either in eating emotionally to like make yourself feel better or not eating because of feeling bad. Um, do we have any Cancer moons up in here? Okay, let's move on. My older kid is a Cancer moon, and he's always trying to parent the younger one and grow little plants from seeds. Oh, I love that. Beautiful. Okay, Cynthia. So we have Scorpio moon. Okay, so Scorpio is a sign that really is driven by intensity and intimacy. So these people, they need to be going through constant processes of transformation. So if they're kind of like Sagittarius in that way, but in a different sense. Sagittarius is kind of always looking to go up, whereas Scorpio needs to go down and then up. They need to go into the dirt, into the shadow, and look at all of the real and raw and gritty things about themselves and the world, and then transform that into something empowering for them. So they have this kind of cyclical nature that needs to go through processes of elimination, purging, healing, renewal, and coming back to their power and coming back to what is true at the end of the day. They're very much a sign that needs to live in their truth and in their integrity. And when they have unmet needs, they can start kind of they can stay in the shadow too long. So they might be a little bit fearful or paranoid, definitely like links to conspiracy theories or being stuck in toxicity in relationships or triangulated relationships like cheating or, three parties. I mean, they can look for intensity in the wrong places. They could snoop or meddle in other people's lives. There's like a lot of, entanglement, I think, with Scorpio. And then emotional things like emotional manipulation or jealousy and things like that can be signs of unmet needs. Layla says that was my brother, Scorpio, Sun, and Moon. Yes, absolutely. Yeah, and you don't always see these things on the surface because they're the moon, but once you really get to know someone, you can see like, oh, they're being really paranoid, maybe something is bothering them. Maybe they have again an unmet emotional need right now. For the Scorpio to meet their needs, they do really well with any practices of self-awareness. So things like going to therapy, astrology or other occult practices, anything that allows them to kind of self-reflect, emotional intimacy within relationships. So one of the best ways to know yourself is by bouncing ideas off of, your internal thoughts off of someone else. So you can see who you are through that person's lens. exploration of the shadow self. Privacy is really important for my Scorpio moons. They need to feel safe to be able to open up on their own time. And then also doing research, like digging deep into things, can be very healing for them. So, if they have these fears or paranoias, one way to maybe kind of relieve themselves of that is by doing more research and understanding more around that subject that they're scared of. Anyone else have Scorpio moon? Leo moon, the eighth house, this resonates as well. Yes, absolutely. There is definitely a sign house conflation that you can do here as well. Okay, Pisces moon. So we have transcendence, compassion, forgiveness, surrender, oneness, uh, artistry. So these are kind of the overall need is, I guess, a push towards kind of being out of this world a little bit. So transcending the physical and material reality and going into more of a spiritual one. That is the deepest need of a Pisces. And sometimes Pisces doesn't always know how to do that because the world is not really always set up for that. So they might turn to things like drugs or alcohol or spiritual bypassing and things that help them get into these altered states of this kind of perfect, celestial or spiritual reality, but they're accessing it through unhealthy means. And so they tend to be the sign most prone to addiction, and just like delusion and escapism because of the need to live in a more kind of pristine or pure kind of spiritual oneness. And, the best way to access that truly is by spiritual practices, things like meditation, or art like movies, escaping in healthy ways like that. They need a lot of time alone. Pisces rules over sleep and over dreams, so you're able to access almost like this other state of consciousness through dream journaling. Or I know a lot of Pisces moons who need quite a lot of naps, a lot of baths or time in the ocean. Things like that can be very healing for them and a way to access that divine nature without the unhealthy mechanisms. Any Pisces moon here, people, or even moon 12th house? Okay. 12th house Gemini moon stellium. Okay, and I also have a um, moon 12th house. Yeah, I have a video on the 12th house planets that I'd recommend too in my YouTube channel. My 3-year-old Pisces moon is very sensitive. Yes, extremely sensitive. And that's why they need that time alone and like to purify their energy. Okay, so now we're gonna kind of get into the other layers. Some of these things I might move a little bit more quickly through. So here is an example of family synastry, which is basically looking at multiple charts and how they relate. So my grandmother, my mom's mom, she was a Capricorn moon. My mom was a Taurus moon, and then I'm a Capricorn moon. So I just think it's interesting how you can see these repetitions through family lines, especially the moon and its relationship to the mother and the mother's mother in the scenario as well. And I think it's fascinating how we all have Earth sign moons. And when you're looking at compatibility with people, you want to look at either moons of the same element. So you can see the elements listed here. So choosing the same element, or water and earth are compatible elements as well, or fire and air. A lot of times, couples will also have opposite moons. So Cancer is opposite Capricorn, Taurus is opposite Scorpio, Aries is opposite Libra. So you can see how relationships, they say opposites attract. That's basically that playing out. But the moon is, like I've mentioned, the moon is going to speak a lot about how we are in our domestic life, like who we are behind closed doors. How do you want your home to look and feel? Do you have particular emotional needs that people need to be aware of? Do you have creature comforts or kind of emotional responses to things? That's going to be your moon. And that's why it's so pivotal in relationships to have something good going on with the moons. And there's a little bit more complexity to this if your moon is not, in the in a compatible element, there are other factors that can help. So don't just, worry about that in particular. But this is a good way to see, if I'm considering a relationship with someone or friends with someone, are we similar or not? And I remember when I was first learning astrology and I looked at my mom's chart, it gave me a lot of freedom and acceptance because I really didn't agree with my mom's like way of being. With the Taurus moon, she was very driven by security. And I have that too because I'm a Capricorn moon, but it is different because of displacement with Uranus and Neptune. And we'll talk about that later. But basically, my needs are really different from my mom's needs. And it was hard for me my whole life to see that discrepancy and be okay with it. It frustrated me. I felt like she didn't understand what was best, which is just I mean, yeah, it was stupid, but I think, astrology just gives you so much acceptance of people because it helps you see that what's best for her is not what's best for me. Those are different things. And that's why it's so beautiful to have this in relationships. So I have grown to appreciate my mother's need for security, even though it's much stronger, than mine. If anyone can relate, let me know in the chat. Okay, so I'm gonna move really quickly through the houses. If you want, you can screenshot this because I don't know if I want to go through like all of this. But basically, the moon has the houses have, like I mentioned, kind of a conflation with the signs in certain ways. I've noticed that people with first house moons, they have a lot more lunar qualities and they tend to have more of like passivity in life, a more feminine energy. So they're kind of the ones who will listen a little bit more and like take advice from people. Thank you, Erica. Moon second house, there is usually a stronger need towards like practical things. There's more kind of survival oriented energy, whether that be useful or not, or like good for them or not. Moon in third house, this is usually more focused on, personal expression, learning, curiosity, and a good example of a moon in third house individual is Malala, who has her moon in Libra in the third house. We mentioned moon Libra. One of their needs is justice, fairness, equality, and it's in the third house, which is the house of personal expression and, words and language. And she is actually a really young author, a Nobel Peace Prize laureate, and an activist for female education in Pakistan. So we can see her moon in Libra in the third house really, really come to life in this example. Moon in the fourth house has a very strong need towards security, towards, financial security, family, home, creature comforts. Moon in the fifth house has that same need towards children, towards creativity, self-expression, art, and playfulness. Moon in the sixth house, they usually have a really strong need for, work, routine, health, feeling useful. I know quite a bit of people with placements in the sixth house, and they just get they light up so much when they see people appreciating what they've done for them. Um, I have a friend here. You can see her moon is in the sixth house. And, I know that she is doing well emotionally when she is on her routine and she's on her exercise regimen. And I know that when things are really inconsistent or when she doesn't have, a schedule that works for her, it really throws her whole life off. And so wherever you have your moon, it puts an emphasis on you needing that kind of above other things because we all need, you know, we all have kind of the same needs, but there's different degrees or different amounts that we need certain things over others. So for example, um, we all have needs for uncertainty and uncertainty. So like spontaneity and uncertainty. But maybe my mom, for example, has a high need for certainty, and a lower need for spontaneity, and I have a higher need for spontaneity and a lower need for certainty. So anywho, Moon is seventh. There is a strong need for relationships, collaboration, understanding from people. Moon in eighth, there is a strong need for emotional connection, very financially or business driven, intimacy, trust. Moon in ninth house, strong need to learn other languages, contact with people who are foreign or different from them, travel to other places, grow, learn, understand through the life through new eyes. Moon in 10th, a strong need for career, esteem, or reputation. Hillary Clinton has her moon in the 10th house, and she obviously was trying to be, the next US president. Brene Brown, who is a I don't know if you'd call her like a therapist. I think she's a researcher primarily. But, normally researchers or therapists, those are not usually people who are famous, but her moon is in the 10th house that pushes her to try to get the accolades or the public esteem. Moon in the 11th house, I had a friend with this, and he was always collecting friends. Yeah, researcher on shame. She's amazing. Yeah, so moon in 11th, you really need some kind of community. I had a friend with this, and he lived with like a ton of people and just was always trying to bring in more people. But this could also be seen on online, so it can show up in different ways. Moon in the 12th, there's a lot going on here. I notice a lot of famous people have the moon in the 12th. And I think that this is because the 12th house is so creative in nature. Cynthia, do you have the moon in the 12th? Because I see you raised your hand. Um, Yeah, so the moon at 12th house, they need a lot of like they need to access again kind of that Piscean quality of a spiritual side of life. So they can often do that through creativity. So, okay. This is my grandmother. This is my chart. So we both have Capricorn moons. My mom, though, always said that my grandma was very stoic. And I, on the other hand, she said, uh, I want to talk everything to death. And I'm a lot more emotional. So, what do you guys think is the reason for this? Why are we have the same moon? It's in the same house. So, what makes us so different from one another? Yeah, moon conjunct Neptune. Yes. Yeah, so you would think her sun in Pisces would make her more, sensitive, but actually I'm much more sensitive than her. So just based off of the moons in particular, um, yeah, so we can go into the whole chart, but I guess don't look at the other planets. But I mean, yeah, yes, look at the other planets. But yes, it's the moon conjunct Uranus and Neptune. Exactly. So that completely changes the way that I am, and it makes me a lunatic. I'm just kidding. No, a little bit. So yes, my moon is conjunct Uranus and Neptune, and I definitely uh, you can tell this really, really big difference in the way that we react to things emotionally. So we're going to kind of talk about a few aspects because we can't get super into this right now, but we're going to talk about a few aspects of the moon. So aspects, what are they? They're basically angles or ways that planets are interacting and communicating with one another. And every planet has its own meaning. So they influence us based off of their meaning. So Uranus has the quality of volatility. So in conjunction to the moon, right next to the moon, it brings emotional volatility to my nature. Not totally, but enough. Uranus is moving next to your moon tomorrow. Okay, yeah. So there's so much I could say about that, but that can be really big for having massive changes in your family and your home and how you feel about things and getting outside of your comfort zone. So aspects are something that we see in transits, which is like where planets are moving and they start to form different angles or aspects with where they were when we were born. But we also have natal aspects that is kind of formed and solid, like not moving, not changing from when we're born. And Diana said, yes, she's moving to India. Exactly. So yeah, those major, major changes. So aspects show us the natal aspects show us a complex story of our early childhood experiences and how those experiences formed core beliefs and emotional responses. So they add a lot of nuance to the moon that I think is super, super, super important. So a moon Uranus individual, like for me, I have moon conjunct Uranus. I talked about at the beginning of the session that my dad killed himself when he was 40. So that was an overnight thing. It was very unexpected, very disruptive, and it represents that kind of shock to your system because Uranus is very shocking, very surprising. So that really left its toll on me. I mean, being very vulnerable here, and it has made me and it has made me react differently to things because I'm fearful of the rug being pulled out from under me. That's one thing. And it also is a part of my nature because of that aspect being in my birth chart. I also crave a lot of change, a lot of freedom. And it's almost like I'm anticipating the change in a way. So I'm attracted to a lot of novelty. So it's interesting how you can have a yeah Uranus trining your moon can have a similar effect, but it's much more palatable for our lives. And Uranus also tends to be really strongly associated with being on the autism spectrum. And one of the things that I think you can kind of get with Uranus is like yeah, Uranus squaring moon sounds so similar. Yeah, Uranus can have a detachment, like as a defense, or kind of like dissociation almost. So, and I think that also is related to, being on the spectrum and Uranus. Anyway, that's a whole other thing. But one of the primary kind of coping mechanisms is to either want change or to, again, kind of just detach or dissociate. And so a moon Uranus person needs to intentionally curate freedom in their life and space and change in their life so that it doesn't come out in more disruptive ways. But mine isn't just Moon Uranus, mine's also Moon Neptune. So you start getting complicated because you have a lot of cooks in the kitchen putting in their own ingredients, and it makes it a very individualized experience. So for a Moon Neptune person, I actually see this quite commonly in people who grow up with mothers who are kind of like victims. This isn't always the case, but this is one way I see this. Um, so like a sensitive mom, and then an abusive, father. My father wasn't abusive, but my stepdad, I definitely had issues with him. And so I kind of saw her as a victim in certain ways. Um, Moon Neptune can also represent a mother or a childhood, excuse me, where, people grew up in like the film industry or the spiritual industry. Um, and because those are very Neptunian, they can they can be a little bit sensitive, prone to escapism, prone to addiction, poor emotional boundaries. It can really take on things from other people, which is why they usually do really well in things like film or spirituality because you need more porousness to embody a role or to understand somebody's emotional needs. Um, and so with my moon conjunct Uranus and Neptune, it makes me very, very sensitive, but also have maybe a prone to be kind of detached at certain times with that Uranus energy. So it's like, who are you going to get today? Um, I'm not that unwell, I promise. But yeah, you can see how this relates to my nature and makes it much more complex than just, I'm stoic, moon and Capricorn. Not to say that if you have moon and Capricorn that you're always stoic. It's a little bit more complicated than that, but you can see why my grandma was super stoic and I'm not. And my grandma grew up in an environment where, she grew up in a lot of poverty, which is very typical for something with Moon Saturn, Moon Capricorn. And she had to work really, really hard from a young age. For me, I didn't really have the poverty piece, but I had these disruptions within my home. My father was an addict and then he died really suddenly. That's a very Moon Neptune, Moon Uranus experience. Some people will maybe move around a lot and they have an ungrounded quality to their childhood, and that can also be very Moon Neptune, Moon Uranus, or there could be a history of addiction or history of mental illness with Moon Neptune. So you can see how when, even without looking at predictions and all these things with the future with people's charts, you can really sit down with the client and, read them for filth by saying, you probably had an addict parent, or you moved around a lot, or X, Y, and Z happened, or you have this health issue just because of the moon, which is really powerful. Um, okay, so let's look at an example of another person with moon aspects. So we have Elvis Presley, moon in Pisces in the fourth house. He's a creative, makes a lot of sense. His moon is loosely conjunct Saturn and making a pretty tight square to Chiron. So I'm curious, what do you guys think this could mean for him? Any kind of like interpretations? I know we haven't gone over everything. Some kind of illness, wounding of sorts? Absolutely. Yeah, absolutely. If you have anything, keep dropping it in the chat. I'm gonna keep going. So when we break down Moon Saturn, to me, and to me, Moon Saturn aspects and Moon Chiron aspects are the hardest to have. If you have this aspect, I don't want you to get like super down. Um, you know, just know that if you struggle, that there are good reasons for that, and that these truly are more challenging things to have. So, an individual with the moon and Saturn in aspect can usually have some kind of deprivation early in life. This could be that their parents are really busy working. Maybe they grew up in a military household and their parents were really, really strict. Maybe they grew up in poverty. Maybe they grew up with their mom being sick or themselves being sick. But there's usually some type of hardship and kind of like isolation experience in early childhood. They can have a difficulty in fully owning their needs. So they can really suppress them or have shame or guilt around having needs. They are often parentified, and that struggle or that lack in childhood can make them grow up really fast and make them very self-reliant and very responsible for themselves. And it can be difficult for them to open up and try to receive or be dependent on people, which usually the moon is about dependency, like we talked about at the beginning. But with Saturn there, something goes wrong in that process of the first 18 months of life, and you're taught that the world is kind of harsh and that you have to kind of do it alone in certain ways. And so it can be hard to be vulnerable and to rely on others with the moon Saturn. Um, yeah, so Moon and Taurus, opposite Pluto Saturn. A lot of my deal has been reparenting. Exactly. Yeah. So you kind of parent, you're like a parent from a young age, and then you kind of have to go back as you get older to vulnerable phases of childhood and kind of re-interact with that child self. Yes. So every time I have Moon Saturn solar returns, I struggle mentally, go through some type of grief or loss. Yeah, Saturn is really common with both grief and loss because there is something usually lacking, and that can make it really emotionally challenging as a transit, as a natal aspect, all types of things. Moon Chiron is similarly very challenging, and it can indicate having some kind of trauma or rejection. It's very common in physical ailments. So having, being born with a predisposition to ill health or, you know, paralysis or something chronic is really common with Moon, Saturn, and Chiron involved. But usually there's something on an emotional level that has some issues with worthiness, and relationships. And it's almost like we have to reparent again the self to heal. Um, Okay, so Elvis Presley, he had, like I mentioned, his moon in Pisces. He has moon in Pisces. So what do you think his needs were with his moon in Pisces? I know we kind of talked about this earlier. What does a Pisces moon person need in their life? Like what are really common, um, yeah, what are common needs? So Elvis had, yeah, spirituality, creativity, creative outlets, exactly. So, and he was obviously a musician. So I think that that was very healing for him. He did grow up in a really close-knit family. He was very close with his mother, moon in fourth house, which related to family. But his moon was conjunct Saturn. So early in life, he experienced quite a bit of poverty and he had to work really hard and earn money for the family. So he was parentified quite young. And Moon Square Chiron, he was also bullied when he was young in school. He had a stutter, which is Chiron's in Gemini, which rules over speech, so that makes sense. And he's had a lot of health issues and issues with addiction, which is very common for an unhealthy coping mechanisms for Moon and Pisces individuals. So you can see here the struggle already kind of being played out. And in a health chart, like this is something that would be concerning for me to see this aspect. I would, have some questions, and we know that, he didn't have the best health. He had quite a few conditions, and ultimately we all know that he passed quite young. Okay, so one more, we're going to come up on one more example, but I want you guys to kind of anticipate, what do you think a moon conjunct South Node and conjunct Mars might bring up for people? So a moon South Node, um, we covered moon North Node when we looked at Kate and Prince Harry. Is it Prince Harry? Prince William? Yeah, Prince William, they both had Moon North Node, which may make sense because they're quite famous, and this is a common aspect for famous people. And I mentioned also at the start of our session the Moon South Node, and how this can often be linked with like mental illness of some sort or physical illness. It's really often related to difficulty with women, difficulty with the body dysmorphia, eating disorders, self-harm. Those are all really common with Moon South Node. Having a difficult relationship with the mother and motherhood in general. Um, you know, there could be, again, mental health stuff going on, health issues, like I mentioned, emotional suppression. However, these individuals are also really psychically sensitive and often really good therapists because of their kind of awareness of other people, ability to analyze and understand people's emotions. So they can be very aware of other people's inner worlds. But the South Node is quite depleting in nature, so it can also be challenging for them to express emotions healthily. Okay, Moon Mars individuals, they can usually grow up in a home that has more hostility. So if you see like a strong Moon Mars Pluto situation, you can usually bet that there's some type of abuse, verbal, physical, emotional, or hostility in general within the home growing up. Usually there is some problem in expressing one's anger or expressing one's needs or asserting themselves. Um, yeah, so, and then this often relates like most times when there's a difficult aspect of the moon and Mars, like a moon opposition or a moon square Mars, 9 times out of 10, they will have tumultuousness in relationships. They can react maybe a little bit defensively, or they just have maybe like start and stops, or just go through some things in relationships where they kind of have to learn what they're looking for in people because they might at sometimes be overly passive, overly assertive. It's just hard to navigate the emotional intensity sometimes, meet their needs, express anger. Um, what I consider minor aspects, no, I would look at square and opposition and then maybe conjunction to see like, and you'll know if you have, this kind of swings between reactivity and like passivity in your relationships, you'll notice that if you feel a little bit imbalanced with others. I have Moon trine Mars and square Saturn. A lot of energy, but difficulty starting things or expressing anger. Yeah, so the difficulty expressing anger would be Mars squaring Saturn if they are also squaring. Lots of anger in my childhood, and I struggle with mine and others' anger. Yeah, anger can be a difficult topic. So, what do you guys think in a low vibration of someone with the moon conjunct Saturn, or sorry, conjunct the South Node, conjunct Mars? Given what we talked about with, mental illness and anger and frustration, how do you think that this could manifest in a person? And we're going to show an example after this to illustrate. The person, adrenal fatigue, low energy, absolutely. Yeah, physically they could have low energy. They could have low confidence as well. Mars is very highly associated with depression when it's struggling in a chart. And if you take my course, we'll go into more detail about, how to know when there's an area of the chart that's struggling, because there are a lot of factors that go into that. But when Mars is struggling, testosterone can be quite low. Adrenals can be low, energy can be low, confidence can be low, depression can be there. Avoidance, it could be avoidance, yeah. Think of a lower vibration, even lower than that, because that's kind of like neutral, I would say. There's a lot of avoidant people. So think about the worst case scenario, what you think anger management issues, lashing out at people, hurting your mother. Yes, yeah, that's what I'm talking about. So I almost didn't want to include this example because it's just so negative. Rage, violence, absolutely. Yes, that's exactly what I'm talking about. Okay, so violence against women. Okay, that was the money, right on the money. Self-destructive actions, absolutely. Violence against women. So here we have an example of Ted Bundy, who particularly targeted women. So trigger warning if you don't want to hear about uh, Ted Bundy, then uh, mute your computer for a minute. So he is an American serial killer who attacked, raped, and killed dozens of young women. And he had a particular thing about women. And he had a lot of stored rage. He was an illegitimate child, which is not a big deal now, but during his time, I think was a bigger social thing. Yeah, it is very creepy. Um, he really resented his mother. I think he resented women. Yes, and he got off on hurting women. Um, and yes, the Mars South Node conjunction, you can, if you have this in your chart, you can have a violent propensity, but you have to be careful with things in astrology because you don't know going into a reading where somebody's level of consciousness is. So somebody can have a low level of consciousness and they can be violent, or they could just be channeling this in a healthier way, like they're an athlete, for example, because Mars is the planet of athletes. So you don't know. You don't want to go in thinking everyone with Mars South Node Moon is going to have serial killer tendencies. But if you see that, you know that that person grew up in a hostile environment. I would be shocked if Ted Bundy didn't grow up in some type of, hostility or abuse growing up. I'd be shocked. I know he said he wasn't abused, but I don't know that that's true with a chart like this. So if you want to look at the aspects that your moon has, you can, when you look at, astro.com and you type in your chart, usually there is this kind of little half triangle thing with all these aspects in them. If you look at the first line, you can see here, what is aspecting what. So we have moon conjunct, that little circle and line is conjunct, and then moon square Chiron. And we'll cover aspects in detail in the course because it's too much to do all now. Okay, the last thing I want to talk about, the icing on the cake that we looked at the very beginning is the dispositor. So the dispositor of the moon, it's a bonus. You definitely do not need this, but it can be helpful in understanding an additional layer of complexity to your chart. So a dispositor is a planet that manages another planet. It has some kind of authority over that planet. It's like a teacher that leads that planet. It tells it what to do in a way. So when the moon is trying to meet her needs, she is going to also look to the dispositor, almost like for permission or another avenue for how to meet those needs. So a dispositor planet, the sign that it's in is going to show you additional ways in which you can meet your needs. So a dispositor planet is a planet that rules the sign that the moon is in. So if you have a moon in Aries, Mars rules that sign, and Mars is your dispositor planet. So what sign is Mars in your chart? And then we already had, in the previous section, we already talked about what each sign looks for in terms of healthy avenues to express their needs. So you can also look at that sign to see what are some other ways. So Taurus moon, Venus is a dispositor, Gemini moon, Mercury is a dispositor, moon in Cancer is in its home sign, so it's its own ruler. There is no dispositor there. Moon in Leo, the sun is a dispositor. Moon in Virgo, Mercury is a dispositor. Moon in Libra, Venus is a dispositor. Moon in Scorpio, Mars is a dispositor. Moon in Sag, Jupiter is the dispositor, Moon in Capricorn, Saturn is the dispositor, Moon in Aquarius, Saturn is also the dispositor, Moon in Pisces, Jupiter is. So these are the traditional rulers of these signs. So go ahead and drop in the chat where you have your dispositor. Gemini Moon and Mercury both in 12th. Limited ways, I guess. Okay, what sign is Mercury in? Is it also in Gemini? Mutual reception. My Moon and Jupiter have mutual reception. Anything means are connected, but unsure where to go from there. Venus is final dispositor. Yes. Mercury is also in Gemini. Yeah. Yeah. So you're gonna really use your Gemini. You're gonna lean on that. Okay, so we had a question about mutual reception. That's a little outside of this, but I guess just to kind of quickly address this separate concept, um, I see them as like cousins and they can help one another, especially if one of those planets is struggling in some type of way. It can be helped by the other planet in its sign. Just side note. Okay, Libra moon, Venus is a dispositor, and Venus is in Virgo. Okay, great. So, how do you use Virgo tactics along with Libra tactics to meet your needs? What if my dispositor Mercury is retrograde in my 12th house? So, that means that it's kind of like having a manager that's a little bit drunk that day. It's not as like functional in certain ways, but it's still gonna get the job done. Um, Libra, Moon, Venus, and Aries, I get really angry when things aren't fair. Yes, the dark Valkyrie. Am I saying that right? Valkyrie. I love that. Yes, so the dispositor just shows you so much. It's like, yes, I don't just want justice. Like, what happens when, um, like, how do you go about justice, right? If your Libra moon wants justice and you have your Venus in Aries, you're going to go about that in a more assertive way. It's less like you can go out and make something happen yourself rather than kind of looking for existing opportunities. Moon and Capricorn conjunct Neptune, Uranus, Saturn, Pisces, and my sun. Okay, Chandler, you and I are like this girl. I also have my Saturn and Pisces, so you can see my Moon and Capricorn. I one of my core needs is to be productive, to work, to feel like I'm accomplishing something. But my Saturn in Pisces, since it's a manager of my moon, um, it's not just any work that I need to do, it's spiritual work. I need to feel like I am, you know, doing something that is beyond myself. And that can look different for other people. Maybe for others, that would be artistic work, for example, or charitable work. But you can see how it kind of taints the example in a different direction of I need to meet the need for work, but I also need to meet my need for transcendence. And the material world and transcendence are intricately woven into my innate needs. And when that's not being met, what do? Saturn and Pisces could also indicate that I have maybe escapist or addictive tendencies. That's something that I have to be careful of. Here is Ted Bundy. You can see that he has his moon in Sagittarius. So Jupiter is the dispositor. His Jupiter is in Scorpio. So he got a lot of pleasure from murdering people, but he didn't do it in Sag is not always like the most planned people. I mean, they can be, depends on the rest of their chart. But as a sign in and of itself, Sag is quite spontaneous. So having Jupiter be in Scorpio and managing the Sagittarius moon, it's making sure that he's not being spontaneous in his murders and how he goes about it. Instead, he's quite cunning, manipulative, planned, meticulously planned. And it was the psychology of it. I was just reading today how he would murder a girl and then he would take her jewelry and then give it to some other woman in his life that was bothering him. And he would get a lot of pleasure from knowing something that she didn't know, like knowing that he murdered that person and that other person is just wearing it. So it's like a sick psychological thing. And it's more than just the spontaneity or the desire to have sex. It's a power thing that he wanted over other people. And so you can see this Jupiter and Scorpio at play, that it's so much more than just, lust and abuse to abuse. It's the power play, the ability to be in control and to manipulate somebody to your will, which is the low vibration of Scorpio. So you can see again, the dispositor plays a really strong role in how we meet those needs or how we go about that planet taking action. So Chandler says, finding how important spiritual work is for me. I was missing it before and felt unfulfilled. Exactly. Okay, so we already talked about this. Okay, so now we're going to move into the portion of the astrology course. But before we do, I wanted to ask, do you guys have any questions? I know that it's already been like an hour and a half almost. So dispositors can be applied to any planet. Absolutely. Yes. It gets a little complicated because we have something called like a final dispositor, but we can have multiple final dispositors. It's kind of like we can create like a little hierarchy, a tree hierarchy, but that's beyond just this lesson. Any other questions? So this is kind of like the course. It's definitely going to be broken down differently. So many questions. Yeah, exactly. And of course, in the course, you can ask as many questions as you want, and I'm very happy to answer. Of course, their astrology is a lifelong practice. So I don't know everything. I'm going to say that. I have done a lot of readings. I have a lot of personal experience. I've studied a lot, but I am a lifelong student, and astrology is something that we can learn together as a group, especially when we start interacting and playing around with people's charts and seeing how they come to life. It is truly a lifelong practice, and I'm excited to be learning from you guys as well. So let's get into, thank you, Shannon. Let's get into what the astrology course is going to be about. So it is a 20-week course, and I say that with like an asterisk because this is a beta launch, which means that you guys are like the guinea pigs. If you decide to join me for this, it is very much up in the air in terms of like how long will this take, and do you guys want to add something onto it or go deeper into something, or do you need more time to flush something out or sit with something? Well, you need more practice. So I'm going to say 20 weeks given the amount of the quantity of content, but be this could be flexible. So we're going to start on July 27th, if that works for everybody. Again, beta students. So you guys are going to be learning with me live. We're going to have 2 sessions a week on Zoom. They'll be recorded if you can't attend. I definitely want to have lessons every Sunday morning. We'll have to work out the time. It's Sunday morning in the US. It'll be in the evening here in the UK. So we can work out the time. I'll do a poll, see what works best for people. And I'm assuming that the lessons are going to be a few hours. Again, I don't know exactly how long that's taken. I think it will vary from week to week. I would also like to do a second session. Yes, it's a group course. So it's like this, but you'll all be on Zoom and we'll be talking and asking questions and working with each other. So it will be a group exercise, but also everyone will have individual time because it is going to be small. So I'm going to cap it. I haven't decided how many yet, or if I need to cap it, because if not, if too many people don't try to sign up, then I'll be okay. But I definitely want to be small kind of groups. I want people to really get to know each other, to work with their own charts, to bring all your questions. This is truly like a very interactive experience. Sunday mornings, perfect. I'm glad that works great. Yeah, I do want to do one other session during the week sometime. Could also be, yeah, I don't really know when that's going to happen. We'll have to talk about it. But the other session, I want it to be more like we're practicing stuff or we're doing embodiment and healing exercises or questions on the content. So we'll have one for lessons that it's always Sunday morning, and then the other day, we can decide as a group when to do that. So early bird pricing is $575, or you can do $143 a month, $143.75 a month on Afterpay. You'll get a certificate at the end if you do all the homework and you do like a trial reading. And then my goal is to really have this be a community. So I want there to be, we're accessing each other, we're establishing friendships. Like this is not some large, industrial thing. This is like a close group of us. If you're traveling in October, that's totally great. You can access, Zoom on your phone if you have access to internet. If you don't, that's okay too. You can always just watch the recordings later. So things will be really flexible. We can work with you if you get behind too. So what's going to be in the course? So this is a course that focuses on natal charts. I do want to do a second course after this on like predictions. Predictions get really complicated really fast. So we need to make sure that the foundations are very, very strong to begin with. So the foundations, to be able to truly read a chart and piece it all together, is going to be really important. Natasha, did you have a question? I saw that you raised your hand. Um, so what we're going to do to look at the foundations. Uh, so this is just natal chart. This course is just natal chart. We're not going to be doing predictions. So predictions would be like transits. Yeah, zodiacal releasing would also be included in that, but that is like the second course. So this is just the natal chart course. So we're going to deeply explore each planet and how it relates to what phase of psychological development. And we're going to break down that planet and its aspects to every other planet. We're going to go one by one and look at, if you have, like we mentioned, Moon square Mars, what might you see in that person's life? What might they have grown up with? How are their emotional responses to things? And we can start layering more and more things on top of that. We will also do a whole separate section. I don't know if it's going to be a workshop or if I'm going to do like a unit, but we're going to do a whole thing on relationships. So I want to do, synastry readings, which is like looking at chart interactions, attachment styles. Yeah, so uh, relationship compatibility, that sort of thing for intimate relationships and then family and things of that nature. Layla asks if you read classes primarily. Is that okay? Absolutely. Yeah. So I will go over why I'm going to teach with whole sign. I look at both. I always read for both, and I usually just use my intuition or I literally read both charts at once. But there is a reason I'm using whole sign when teaching, and it will make things easier. But if you use Placidus, absolutely. I wholeheartedly believe in Placidus. If you use whole sign, you can use any house that you want. And I'll just give you the reasons why I use which and why. Um, Okay, so we'll do relationship astrology. I'm going to give you my reading framework, go step by step, what to look for as when, for each kind of question that people have. So if people are coming to you for like a career question or a love question, what are you going to look for in the chart? And I'll give a step-by-step process for this. Also, all of the things that you'll look for, like a checklist for everything that relates to an imbalance. And people will like primarily feel in their chart where there's an imbalance because that's going to be like the fucked up part of their life. And we all have one. So that's going to be really fundamental to looking at charts in general is understanding these kind of checklists or these process to and what to look for. Um, do I have a reference book for the class? Yes. Yes, I will be giving it out as we go. Um, but yes, I wrote, I mean, I've been writing this book for like too long. So that's really what this is all based off of. We're going to look at heart's work. So when we look at each planet, they all have their own archetypes and they kind of represent something within our psyche. And when these planets interact with each other in hard aspects, they're kind of like different parts of ourselves arguing with each other. And they create distress because they can work at cross purposes. So we're going to look at that a little bit deeper and kind of how to bring some of these things together. We will also look at Chiron. So Chiron is the wounded healer. It's one of the most sensitive and kind of triggering parts of our chart. It's also really strong in people who are healers. I always see people who are healers with a dominant Chiron. And we're going to look deeply into this, like all the aspects of this, and examples and signs to a lesser extent. But what's more important is the aspects and the house placements. So we're gonna go deeply into this in a way that I feel like I have not seen online, like in my studies and even reading books on Chiron. I've been deeply unsatisfied with what's out there. So I'm excited to share with you what I've learned through my studies. We're going to look at also the North and South Node. This to me is the most important part of our practice. We're going to look at this in relation to our past life story, our karma, our lessons that we're here to learn, and then our soul purpose, which I think is kind of like the North Star for us throughout our life. So that's why I think that this is the most important part, because you can get the whole dynamics of your psychology, but if you don't know why you're here, what's the purpose of all this, then it's kind of you're losing that higher meaning. And then lastly, we're going to go over the logistics, like how to work with clients, what's my process, what to look out for, ethics. And then we'll have a lot of practice together. You'll also have practice on your own, and then you'll do a reading for me to kind of like pass the class, I guess. Um, so yeah, just to review, these are the fundamentals of what we're going to look at, the foundations of astrology. Some of this will be kind of review for some of you guys. I know most of you guys are intermediate. So we're going to review this, but kind of through a different lens. I think it's important to go over everything together to make sure nothing is missed, there's no gaps. We're going to look at our family and ancestral karma, our core beliefs, our core wounds, the developmental years, how that relates to astrology and the development of each planet, our soul purpose, past life story, relationships, synastry, each planet archetype, parts work, Chiron, how to work with clients, all of that. And again, the full price is $575 or 4 payments of $143.75. Um, so if you sign up, you will get 2 weekly Zoom calls, uh, a community access. So we're gonna have some kind of like, I was thinking Discord, if you guys want to do WhatsApp or some other form. Again, a lot of this is just like what works best for you guys. Let's all talk about it. The course starts on July 27th and it goes through the end of the year and potentially longer than that, depending on kind of what our pace is. We might have some breaks if you guys need breaks, things of that nature. As you will also have access to all the recorded content. I'm going to put it on Podia. Will this workshop recording be shared? Details about the class will on your website somewhere. Yeah, so later on I'm going to make a sales page where I'll have the details about the course, and it's not anywhere now. And yes, I will email you guys a copy of this workshop so you can see this information as well. I'll also, let me drop this in the chat. Actually, wait, I'll do that in a second. So all the course content will be saved for you guys, and you can watch it at any time. If you don't want to do the course live, you really don't have to do it live. I know we all have different schedules. Early bird pricing is going to end on the 16th, so we have 10 days. As a beta student, you guys are really helping me in the course design. So the expectation is that I really need your feedback. I need your flexibility. I need, your advice. Like, what do you want? We're kind of creating this together, and that's why it is cheaper than it will be in the future. A lot cheaper. If you sign up for the course and you're not really like who I was intending the course for, if there's something that doesn't fit, I will refund you. And yeah, I want to curate this as a really great environment. I don't think that's going to happen. We have a really beautiful and small community, but I just wanted to let you guys know that I want us to be a really great fit for each other on both ends. This isn't like a money grab. This is something that's really important to me and worked on for so many years. And it took me many, many, many years to learn the things that I will be teaching you guys. A lot of it is my own practice. Obviously, I've learned quite a bit from books and others as well. And I'm just bringing in all the most important information. So I just want this to go in the right hands. Yes. Uh, okay, Diana asks, I love your intuition. Will you be touching on intuition astrology? Yeah, absolutely. That especially when we get to the nodes piece, because a lot of that is going to be, stuff that relates to things that are past lives, and we obviously cannot prove that. Um, though you will see usually some repetition in the current life, so there's some applicability there. But yeah, I think intuition is really strong. And so that's going to be really what we're practicing throughout is yes, you can memorize like, okay, this planet means this and this is that, but how you piece it together is an intuitive practice. And it's something that you develop. It's not something that you just know. You have to practice. Okay, please send the link to sign up in the follow-up email. Okay, great, Courtney, I totally will. Thank you so much. Kristen did work with me and she said she's an incredible teacher. I can't wait to join again to continue the endless research and development astrology. Absolutely. It is an endless process. So um, I'm gonna see, oh, Diana, that's so great. So I'm gonna see if I can uh, drop the, oh, I did not mean to do that. I'm going to drop this checkout link in the chat. You guys should have the ability, oops. You should have the ability to pay with Afterpay if you want to do installments. If that doesn't work for you and you want to do a payment plan, let me know. If you don't want to just sign up, if you have more questions, if you're not, ready for this and you just want to learn more about this process or this course, then book a discovery call. We can have like a free 20, 30 minute or however long call to kind of chat about, what you're curious about. Um, Great question. Is it appropriate for students that don't have an intention to become an astrologer but interested in it for personal knowledge? Absolutely. And I actually think that most people who join are probably going to have that desire. I think most people start off just wanting to learn about themselves and wanting to learn astrology in general. And then it kind of blooms from there, often maybe with Jade, like unwillingly. Or in my case, like it was never my intention. And I just studied astrology for the pure joy. And then it ended up being something else entirely. So if you just want to do this to work with your family, help heal people around you, help other people understand themselves, yeah, I think it's a great tool for your whole entire life. And it's almost like once you know these things, you can't put it back into the box. Does that make sense? Like you can't unsee it. I'm planning to start another type of astrology in September. Would that be too much? Um, can you give me details on that? Can you give me more details onto that? I think it depends on what's too much for you. Like how interactive is that course? How much time is that going to take? Because really it'll support each other, and it depends on your time commitment, really. Um, But this course is flexible. So if you find that you need to go away and then come back, like that's okay too. Of course, my goal is to have students there that can really help me with the course design and asking the right questions and including more or less. Perfect. Thank you so much, Ira. It's the astrology of numbers. I'm a beginner. Astrology of numbers. I don't even know what that is. Astrology of number. I truly don't know what that is today. I'm guessing that's Diana. Um, I would recommend this course if you're a beginner because we're gonna go over. That's what I was thinking. Is it numerology? I would definitely recommend this course for a beginner because we're gonna cover the beginner stuff. And we're also going to go quite like we're going to go really deep as well. So I think that there's something here for everybody where you can come to really enrich your understanding of astrology, but it is going to cover all of the foundations. So if you're a beginner, you will have everything that you need to understand things. Um, I would say I'm somebody who likes to go in depth, but I don't like to, like I mentioned at the beginning, I think some astrologers love to talk about a lot of little things and they don't really talk about what is most important. So I like to go in depth on the things that are most meaningful, that will give you the most bang for your buck. So that's why I think this will be a good course also for beginners as well. So any other questions? I did drop in the chat. I don't know if I can pin it or what. Probably not. I did drop in the chat if you wanted to sign up for a discovery call or if you want to just sign up directly for the course. Um, once you enroll, should we expect an email? Yeah, great question. So once you enroll, I will give you guys well, really, I'll give you access to the Podia. I think I need to see like what everybody wants to do, but I'm thinking that we will be all going on to Discord to chat with one another. That might be the best place to have like a community element. And I will be sending like once we kind of pick the best time that works for everybody, I'll be sending over the Zoom link and then I'll be emailing the content as we go along. So it doesn't start till the 27th, so I still have some things to get in order before then. So I won't be sending out that immediately, but I will send out the Podia like in the next few days. Basically, I'll send everything out in the next few days. Um, so yes, Podia is a platform that holds the course. So it will hold all of the Zoom calls once we complete them, the live Zoom calls. I will download them and put them on Podia. There will also be things like homework or quizzes, things like that. Degree theory. Oh, okay, very cool. Yes, learning management system. Exactly. Yeah. I didn't know what LMS was, so you're one step ahead. Yeah, so basically I need to figure out the best time that works for everybody. So we will be in uh, yeah, we'll be in contact to figure out the timing, and then I'll send you all the Zoom information and everything. Yeah, if you want to pay in a different way, absolutely. Just you can send me an email. You can send me Venmo. I can set up like a product. There's a few different ways to pay. So if you want to set it up differently, or if you want to do a longer payment plan, or if you want to, yeah, it's super flexible with that. So you can just shoot me an email about that. Contact at cosmicclarity.astrology.com. And of course, I have already, created this course in the sense that I wrote all the content for it over these last 2 years. But if you guys want to take it in a specific direction and it's like a group consensus around that, this being a beta course allows and flexible in the end date allows me to kind of explore certain things with you that maybe wasn't originally in the content. So if there is something that you really want to focus on or ask more about or explore more deeply, um, and if I feel competent or have something to share in that regard, then I'm happy to also morph the course to fit you guys as well. So we'll be covering some foundational pieces, but then you guys can also have an input in the direction of things. So yeah, so everyone will get access when they sign up, some point before the start date. When it's fully set up, they will have access to the Discord. We may or may not use that or WhatsApp. They'll have access to Podia. I will start dripping course content like some prereqs. And I'll probably give you guys my phone number so that you guys can reach me directly, in case you have questions and whatnot. Any other questions or anything else you want to say? Jade, thank you so much for coming out. Oh my gosh. All right, I'm so excited. Oh, thank you. Okay. I really look forward to practicing with you, Jade. This is going to be awesome. Thank you guys. Thank you so much. I will hang out for like another minute or two in case you have a question. Um, and I'll also you can reach me by email as well. Thank you guys. Thanks for coming out. Thank you. Thank you so much. Patria, is it Patria or Patricia? Thank you, Natasha. You said Patria. Oh, I'm sorry. I shouldn't add letters. Or is it Patria, like Spanish pronunciation? Thank you so much. Thank you, Diana. Oh, thank you, Janelle. I love you. Um, Patria. Yeah, yeah, perfect. Yeah, the Jimenez is what got me there. Amazing. Thank you so much for coming out, you guys. So I think this is a great time to wrap up, and I will be sending this out via email. I appreciate all of you guys so much. I hope to see you in the course if you feel like you're a good fit. If not, maybe a later iteration, or if you have any questions, I'm always here. I love you guys. Take care. Bye.